Lose time, lose sleep, lose friends, lose mornings, lose sweat you didn't even know you had. But lose the hunger, lose the edge, lose the target on your back, Shedeur Sanders says now. And that mindset might be the exact reason the sports world just froze in disbelief. Because right now, there's massive online buzz claiming Shedeur Sanders is tied to an alleged $80 million Gatorade endorsement deal, the biggest rookie sponsorship rumor the NFL has ever seen. And the wildest part, it didn't come from a highlight reel. It didn't come from throwing 5 touchdowns. It came from a single press conference moment that reportedly flipped the switch for one of the biggest brands on the planet. Think about how insane this sounds. A 5th-round pick, a rookie with barely any NFL starts, and suddenly his name is being whispered in the same financial conversations as generational superstars. While fans were focused on game stats and draft debates, something much bigger was happening behind the scenes. Executives weren't watching his arm strength. They were watching his mindset, his words, his presence. Because while most rookies step into the league chasing attention, Shedeur stepped in talking about struggle, about staying uncomfortable, about refusing to feel satisfied. And that's where this story takes a sharp turn. Reports claim Gatorade didn't see just another quarterback. They saw a walking brand message. A young athlete who naturally represents grind culture without forcing it. Someone who doesn't celebrate too early. Someone who doesn't act entitled. Someone who talks like he's already thinking 5 steps ahead. And here's what makes this even crazier. The timing couldn't be more perfect. At the same moment, fashion insiders started linking Shedeur to luxury brands and Paris runway rumors, sports marketing executives allegedly started circling his name too. From football fields to fashion houses, from locker rooms to global campaigns. This wasn't random momentum. This was strategic elevation. But before you assume this is just hype, wait until you hear what Shedeur actually said that made brand executives allegedly lean forward in their seats. Because it wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, it wasn't arrogant, it was simple, calm, and dangerously powerful. And once you understand that moment, the $80 million rumor suddenly doesn't sound crazy anymore. It starts sounding calculated. It started with what looked like a normal post-game media session. No dramatic setup, no viral headline expected, just a rookie quarterback answering routine questions. But according to reports circulating inside sports marketing circles, this was the exact moment Gatorade allegedly locked in on Shedeur Sanders as their next big face. A reporter asked him what he took away from his first start. Most players would have talked about confidence, momentum, or proving doubters wrong. Instead, Shedeur went in a completely different direction. He talked about footwork, timing, learning how fast NFL windows close, how much there was still to improve. No victory lap, no ego, just work. That alone raised eyebrows. But the real moment came when the conversation shifted to the past few months. Someone brought up how he always keeps a smile on his face, always looks calm, always seems unbothered. And that's when Shedeur dropped the line that reportedly flipped the entire narrative. He admitted the last 6 to 7 months had been tough, not in a dramatic way, not for sympathy, just honest, quiet, real. And then he said it. "I'm not comfortable." According to insiders, that phrase hit different. Because Gatorade's entire brand identity is built around pushing limits, training through pain, refusing to coast. And here was a 22-year-old rookie saying exactly what elite athletes are supposed to say without sounding rehearsed. What made it even stronger was how he followed it up. Instead of talking about pressure or fame, he shifted the focus to gratitude, to teammates, to defense, to the people around him who made things easier. Every answer circled back to we instead of me. That's when marketing executives allegedly realized something important. This wasn't just a quarterback with talent. This was someone with message discipline. Someone who naturally communicates brand values without trying to sell anything. Someone who doesn't chase the spotlight but still commands attention. And once that press conference ended, the whispers reportedly started moving fast. Calls, meetings, internal discussions. Because in a league full of loud personalities and viral egos, Shedeur's calm, grounded presence suddenly felt rare. But that was only the beginning, because the way this deal was allegedly structured makes the story even crazier. And once you hear how Gatorade supposedly built this contract around Shedeur's mindset, everything starts to make sense. Not long after that press conference, the internet started buzzing, quiet at first, then louder. Sports insiders, marketing pages, and brand-watch accounts all started floating the same number, $80 million. And again, to be clear, this hasn't been officially confirmed. But what made people stop scrolling wasn't just the amount. It was who the money was allegedly going to. A rookie, a fifth-round pick, a player most teams passed on more than 100 times, and suddenly his name was attached to the largest rookie endorsement rumor in NFL history. That's not normal. That's not random. That's a statement. According to reports, this wasn't a typical sponsorship deal either. It wasn't built around highlight bonuses or individual stat milestones. Instead, insiders claim the structure focused on team success, playoff appearances, community impact, and long-term brand alignment. In other words, Shedeur wouldn't make the biggest money by padding numbers. He'd make it by winning, by building culture, by representing consistency. And that's what makes this deal feel different from everything we've seen before. Gatorade allegedly wasn't betting on one season. They were betting on identity, on longevity, on someone they could build campaigns around for a decade, not just one viral commercial. But here's the part that really turned heads inside the industry. Sources claim Gatorade originally approached Shedeur with a smaller offer, still massive, still life-changing. And instead of instantly saying yes like most rookies would, Shedeur reportedly hesitated. Not because the money wasn't enough, but because he didn't feel like he'd earned it yet. That hesitation is what allegedly pushed executives even harder, because hunger sells, humility sells. A player who doesn't feel satisfied after one start is rare. A player who questions whether he deserves success yet is even rarer. And that's when negotiations supposedly shifted from standard endorsement talk to something much bigger, something more strategic, something built around mindset instead of marketing tricks. But the money wasn't even the smartest part of this deal, because what Shedeur did next shows he's not just thinking like an athlete anymore. He's thinking like an owner, and that's where this story really takes a turn. Here, where everything clicks. Because the rumored $80 million deal isn't just about money. It's about messaging. It's about identity. And more importantly, it's about one phrase Shedeur couldn't stop repeating. "I'm not comfortable." He said it after wins. He said it when named the starter. He said it when asked about Cleveland's energy. He said it when reporters praised him, over and over again. And whether intentional or not, that repetition created something powerful, a slogan without trying to create one. According to industry chatter, Gatorade allegedly saw this as marketing gold, not because it sounded cool, but because it felt real. Athletes talk about grinding all the time, but very few actually communicate it naturally without sounding forced. Shedeur didn't shout it. He didn't dramatize it. He just said it calmly, like it was part of how he thinks. And that's exactly the type of energy brands crave, especially a brand built on pushing limits and rejecting comfort. The idea that no matter how much success you have, you keep working, you keep sweating, you keep chasing the next level. That's a message young athletes instantly connect with. What makes this even more interesting is how consistent he stayed. When asked about bringing excitement back to Cleveland, he didn't celebrate the attention. He redirected it. When praised for leadership, he credited teammates. When asked about personal growth, he talked about improvement instead of validation. That consistency is what allegedly convinced executives this wasn't a one-week trend. This wasn't a viral moment. This was a mindset that could carry campaigns for years. And then came another twist. Reports suggest the deal didn't just give Shedeur money. It gave him influence, creative input, a voice in how his image would be used. Not total control, but enough involvement to keep everything authentic. Why does that matter? Because Shedeur doesn't like solo spotlights. He keeps pulling others into the frame, teammates, coaches, people who helped him get there. And that team-first mentality is something sports marketing has been missing for a long time. But the branding strategy didn't stop with Gatorade. Because at the same time this deal was allegedly forming, Shedeur was quietly building something else that most rookies don't even think about. And that move shows just how far ahead he really is. While most rookies are still figuring out playbooks and media training, Shedeur was already moving like someone building a long-term empire. Not just endorsements, not just sponsorship checks, actual brand positioning. Reports suggest he's been working on his own apparel concepts, locking in fashion partnerships, and aligning himself with brands that fit his image instead of grabbing every deal that comes his way. That matters, because quick money fades, brand equity doesn't, and Shedeur seems to understand that difference better than most players his age. Look at how he handles attention. When reporters tried to hype up milestones, he deflected. When fans hyped his individual success, he shifted focus to the team. When praise came in, he stayed calm. That's not accidental, that's controlled presence. Even small moments reveal it. Gifting teammates gear before games, publicly thanking staff, showing appreciation instead of flexing status. Those aren't just nice gestures, they're signals. Signals that say leadership, culture, long-term thinking. And then there's the crossover appeal. College football fans followed him from Colorado. NFL fans are watching his rookie rise. Fashion communities started paying attention. Even political figures publicly supporting him created mainstream visibility that goes far beyond sports. Love it or hate it, that kind of exposure expands an athlete's market instantly. That's why marketing experts say this isn't about touchdowns, it's about reach, demographics, cultural influence. Shedeur doesn't just live in football spaces. He moves between different audiences effortlessly, and that's rare. But here's the part that shocked people closest to the negotiations. According to sources, Shedeur almost walked away from the Gatorade deal early on. Not because the terms were bad, not because he wanted more money, but because he didn't feel comfortable accepting that level of recognition yet. That hesitation changed everything, because it revealed something most brands struggle to find: genuine hunger, not performative grind, real hunger. And once executives saw that side of him, they didn't just want him as an endorser anymore. They wanted him as the face of a movement. But the final piece that sealed this story wasn't business. It wasn't money. It was the way Shedeur handled pressure when it mattered most. And that moment showed exactly why brands are betting this big on him. There was one question during that press conference that reportedly changed the entire tone of the room. A reporter asked Shedeur about how hard the last 6 months really were. Not the public version, not the highlight version, the real version, the pressure, the expectations, the grind he didn't show on camera. You could see him pause, not because he didn't have an answer, but because he actually thought about it. And instead of turning it into a dramatic story, he kept it simple. He talked about faith, about staying focused on the present, about not looking backward, about refusing to dwell on tough moments once you've moved past them. That response mattered more than people realized, because brands don't just look for talent anymore. They look for emotional control, media maturity, someone who won't fold under pressure or create headlines for the wrong reasons. And Shedeur showed all of that in real time. But what really stood out was what he didn't say. He didn't complain. He didn't blame anyone. He didn't play the victim. He didn't bring up obstacles for sympathy. He acknowledged the struggle and immediately shifted forward. That's leadership language. That's long-game thinking. Then came the follow-up questions about teammates, about chemistry, about the locker room. And once again, Shedeur stayed consistent. Every answer pointed away from himself and back to the people around him. Receivers, defense, coaches, front office, even other quarterbacks. According to industry insiders, that's when executives realized this wasn't just a good interview. It was a blueprint. A young athlete who understands how to speak without creating controversy, how to stay humble without sounding weak, how to stay confident without sounding arrogant. That combination is rare, and it's extremely valuable because it means longevity, not just on the field but in public image. And that's why the alleged deal kept growing. Not because Shedeur demanded more money, but because brands kept seeing more value, more stability, more upside. But here's the real question. What happens if this gamble actually pays off? Because if Shedeur delivers on the field even halfway to his potential, this deal could change the entire endorsement game forever. And that's where this story gets even bigger. If this rumored deal actually plays out the way insiders suggest, it won't just be big for Shedeur. It will reset how brands choose athletes moving forward. Because for decades, endorsement money followed superstars after they proved everything. MVPs, champions, Hall of Fame resumes. That was the formula. But this situation flips that model upside down. Instead of waiting for trophies, brands are allegedly betting on mindset, narrative, and cultural influence first. And Shedeur is the perfect test case. Think about it, he doesn't fit the traditional rookie marketing profile. He wasn't the first overall pick. He didn't enter the league with universal hype. He didn't come in with guaranteed stardom. But what he does have is something harder to manufacture. A story, an underdog angle, a calm confidence, a refusal to feel satisfied. That's powerful in the social media era. Fans don't just want elite athletes. They want relatable journeys. They want struggle arcs. They want growth stories. And Shedeur's path checks all those boxes. Marketing experts believe if this gamble works, other brands will start hunting for similar profiles. Players who connect emotionally. Players who communicate maturity early. Players who carry themselves like leaders before becoming stars. That changes the entire pipeline. And there's another layer to this. The performance-based structure reportedly tied to team success instead of personal stats sends a message too. It tells young athletes that leadership and winning matter more than flashy numbers. That's a huge shift from highlight culture. But with all that upside comes serious risk. Because if Shedeur struggles on the field, if injuries happen, if expectations crash, this deal becomes the most expensive branding gamble ever attempted on a rookie. That's why people are so divided. Some see genius, others see reckless optimism. Which brings us to the final question. Is this the smartest sports marketing move in history or the biggest overreach we've ever seen? Because how this story ends will decide a lot more than just one endorsement deal. What really separates Shedeur from most rookies isn't just football. It's how far his influence already stretches outside the sport. Because whether people realize it or not, he's not operating in one lane anymore. He's moving across multiple worlds at the same time. Sports, fashion, social media, mainstream culture. College football fans followed his journey long before the NFL. Colorado supporters carried his name into national conversations. Now pro football audiences are tuning in every week to see what he becomes next. On top of that, fashion circles started paying attention after the luxury brand rumors surfaced. Suddenly, Shedeur isn't just showing up on sports pages. He's popping up in lifestyle feeds, streetwear discussions, and culture-driven content. That crossover matters. Brands don't just want athletes anymore. They want cultural connectors, people who can move between audiences without losing authenticity. And Shedeur does that naturally. He doesn't change personalities for different platforms. He stays consistent, calm, confident, grounded. Then there's the media side of it. Watch how he handles interviews. He rarely gives headline bait answers. He doesn't chase controversy. He doesn't fuel drama. Instead, he stays measured, respectful, focused. That makes him safe for long-term partnerships. Companies don't have to worry about waking up to damage control headlines. Even moments that could have turned messy, he navigated smoothly. When asked about coaching narratives, locker room rumors, or outside noise, he redirected the conversation toward growth and teamwork. That's not accidental, that's awareness. And here's what really caught the attention of marketing insiders: his ability to attract attention without demanding it. He doesn't force viral moments. They happen because people sense something different, something controlled, something professional beyond his years. That's why some experts believe brands aren't just betting on Shedeur as an athlete. They're betting on him as a long-term public figure, someone who could still be relevant even after football, someone who can evolve into business, fashion, or media spaces down the road. And when you combine cultural reach, calm media presence, and a growing fan base across different demographics, you start to see why this rumored deal suddenly doesn't look crazy anymore. It starts to look strategic. Now all that's left is the final question. Does this gamble actually pay off? Or does it become the boldest risk sports marketing has ever taken? So now we're here, a fifth-round rookie, a calm voice, a simple phrase, "I'm not comfortable," and a rumored $80 million endorsement deal that has the entire sports world split down the middle. Some people see this as the smartest branding play in modern sports history. Others see it as reckless hype built on potential instead of proof. Because let's be real, this isn't just about Gatorade betting on Shedeur Sanders. It's about betting on a mindset, betting on culture, betting on the idea that leadership, humility, and hunger can be just as valuable as touchdowns and trophies. And that's a huge shift from how endorsements have worked for decades. If Shedeur becomes a franchise quarterback, if he leads winning seasons, if he keeps that calm, grounded presence under pressure, this deal could look like a bargain in a few years. People will look back and say Gatorade saw it first, that they didn't wait for superstardom, they built it. But if things go the other way, if injuries, struggles, or inconsistency hit, this becomes the most expensive marketing risk ever taken on a rookie, and every future brand deal will be compared to this moment. Either way, one thing is already clear. Shedeur Sanders isn't moving like a normal athlete. He's moving like a long-term brand, from football fields to fashion rumors, from press conferences to global campaigns, from rookie conversations to cultural conversations. And that's why this story isn't over. It's just getting started. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think this rumored $80 million Gatorade deal is justified? Or is it way too much, way too soon? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to stay ahead of everything happening around Shedeur Sanders, the endorsements, the business moves, the behind-the-scenes stories, hit that subscribe button, because the Shedeur era is only beginning.